All right. Well, I want to focus on this dedication idea a little bit today, and just a wonderful time to talk about this. And I tell you what, we are truly blessed as a church to have little babies, and we have young families here. We're so thankful that you're here, and we really take it a big job and responsibility to do a good job to help you raise your children. And that's why we teach so many classes, and I'm going to be talking about that here today. But it's wonderful joy to have children, and like having snow out there, and those of you that have children already have a little bit older children, you know how much that is, how much fun that is. Maybe last Sunday, since we didn't have church, maybe you were playing out in it some. I know last Sunday we built an igloo, and that was a bigger job than I thought it was going to be. And isn't that true about kids? Before you have your first one, oh, let's have a kid, that'd be great. And then it's like, whoa, we have a kid, this is great. And then later it's like, oh, great, we have a kid, And, it just grows, it can grow, and it's wonderful, wonderful blessings. And so just want to think about this, and because we did that good time to rejoice with them and celebrate with them, we'll have a shorter sermon here today. And so I want to look at this passage that David read for us again, and I appreciate you reading that. You have taken account of my miseries, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? Then my enemies will turn back on the day when I call. This I know, that God is for me. In God whose word I praise, and the Lord whose word I praise. In God I have put my trust. I shall not be afraid. What can mankind do to me? Your vows are binding upon me, God. I will render thanksgiving offerings to you, for you have saved my soul from death. Indeed, my feet from stumbling, so that I may walk before God in the light of the living. What a wonderful passage this is here. And the passage I have there on the front slide is that so I may walk before God. And a lot of people will focus on just that phrase there, but it's in a passage with a lot of meaning. And what's going on here is that David is struggling, okay? He's in a time of struggle. And so God notices all of our struggles. And, we come into this world through a struggle. Isn't that interesting? Before, it wasn't that way. We see when man and women fell from the grace of God, that the great curse given to woman is that I will greatly increase your pain and childbirth. Perhaps Eve had a child already before that, because it says increase your pain. We don't really know. But perhaps one of the kids or more were born before this curse. But now, as all of you mothers can attest to, there's great pain where children come in. So God notices all of your struggles, from the struggle that you had there at the very beginning to the struggles when you depart from this life. God sees them all. How many times have you wondered in a prayer, God, do you see what I'm going through? Do you see what we're going through as a family, as a group, as a country, as a world? Sadly, there's a lot of people that think that God doesn't notice or doesn't care. Well, to have that point of view is to say that this passage is not true. Because God notices it all. And He cares about us so much. And so, as He says here, God is for me. Now, He says that personally, but this is true for every person that is here. Every child, every little baby that we had up here on the stage, God is for him and her. Whether they ever realize that or not. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the world don't realize that God is for them. But He is. He is here for them. And so hopefully our job is to help the young to grow up with that understanding that God is here for them. That naturally we're made to be drawn towards God. And the psalmist here recognizes that. So that I may walk before God. Now, none of these little kids walk yet. And slowly they will get closer to that. And it kind of mirrors a lot of our spiritual growth towards God as we're on spiritual journeys. As when you're younger, you're just being aware that I have a spiritual life. There is a spirituality to me. and you crawl, you make some mistakes, and you have your own fall from grace, and then you walk. And then you walk before God. Whether you're walking towards God or away from God, you're walking before God. God sees you. And, when a little baby's walking first, does that baby understand that he's always and she's being watched? May not realize that, but mom and dad are watching. And so the question is, where are they walking? And sometimes we have to wonder about that. Where are they going? What are they going to get into? And how many times has God had that about us? What are they going to get into? And we can get in trouble sometimes. And so our job as an adult of church here, that we walk in a way that we are a good example. Now, church, it's so hard for us to, counter what the children experience at home. What I say here, what Dylan says in class, and what all the teachers teach in class, let's say 3 hours a week at the most, can't counter the over 160 hours they are at home and in your care. But we do this together. Hopefully we do all that we can to build you up for success. So hopefully we walk as a good example so that they may walk in the light of God. And so, in God, Jehovah, will I praise. He says that. One of the important ways that we walk is that, are we praising God for the things that we have? Do we say our prayers at the meal? Do we say our prayers in times of high excitement and in low desperation? I think it's so important that our children see us be people of prayer and people that just praise Jehovah, God, often. And so we're blessed, for those of you that grew up in church, and now you're however old you are, isn't it good that you don't have a memory of not going to church, not being involved in church? And when you're brought up that way, you are blessed with the idea that church is right. You need to be involved in glorifying God. That's one of the great blessings we can give to our young people, is to always instill in them that we need to be focused on God first and foremost. So that's a big part in what we do. Hopefully we are doing that in a good way. I know this past year has been difficult with us not meeting with the virus and everything, but we strive to do our best. So what can others do to me? This is a question. What can others do to me if I am for the Lord? If God's on my side, then who can be against me? I don't know if you've done this before, but you're on the playground and you're kind of competing about whose dad is biggest and what they can do. And I remember being on the playground, walking by. I was speaking at a school there, and the kids were on the playground. And there was 3 kids on the swing set. And they were talking about how much their dad can do, okay? One little kid said, I saw my dad pick up a big box full of stuff. And they were just swinging the whole time. And the next kid said, my dad picked up 2 boxes and had my little sister. It's like, whoa. And they all said, whoa. And then another one says, I saw my dad push a truck. And they all went, whoa. And it's just interesting to hear little kids compete that. Have you seen little kids talk about that? And maybe talk about mom and what all mom could do. But at that time, they were talking about their dad. And it's just interesting. And we think about, what can our spiritual father do for us? Everything. And he helps us walk, and one day he helps us jog and run spiritually, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And we just continue to go through this life being grateful, and what a great blessing it is to always be into church, always knowing the Christian life. But you know what? If you didn't grow up in church, if you weren't in church for forever, you can always come back. You can always come into church and start where you are right then. And so blessed. Children, without a doubt, are one of the great joys of life. I joke sometimes, children, they bring us some of our highest highs, and unfortunately some of our lowest lows, because we're so invested in them. We love them so much. When they do something great, it's like, yay! When they do something bad, what were you thinking? It's just the way it is. And it really is a great way of connecting us and helping us to understand God's point of view, don't you think? Because when we do things that make God proud, He's like, yes, look at you. I'm so proud of you. You're fulfilling your intention, why I created you. And we do something boneheaded, He's sad. He gets sad. And so it helps us to understand that a little bit through our own children. But without a doubt, we wouldn't trade the lows because the joys are so wonderful. We're kind of made to invest ourselves in others, right? Whether it be children or friends and family, we're made to invest into relationships. And what great relationships, are there any greater relationships than children? And so look at this Psalm 127, verses 3 through 5. Later I'll read verses 1 through 2. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. Why would they not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies at the gate? Because their children helps them be more powerful. Because when they speak, then their children will be with them, perhaps in a fight to back them up, in the lineage after them. Because it's interesting, when he speaks with his enemies in the gate, it helps him to be more powerful. So our children, we should always remember that they are a gift from God. Of course, they're a gift, they're wonderful, but recognize that they are from God. Now, it's easy to maybe forget that because they're from the two parents that come together, but they truly are from God. So if they're a gift from God, therefore they are God's first. If we're being good parents, good grandparents, good helpers in the church, like adopted uncles and aunts that we are, hopefully, to your children, then we need to remember that these kids are God's first. Now, when they're young, when all you kids are young, this is your most impressionable time in your life, and so we're trying to do a good job to help you to grow a love and passion for God. We're going to make mistakes, okay? But hopefully, the long run, we will bring you up to love God first and foremost, so you will understand that God comes first in every aspect of life. Not just when it's convenient, not the first of your extra time, but God comes first always, because you are His. And it's good conversation that you can explain this to your children when they get a little bit older. As you tell them, it's like, you know what? Not only are you God's, but I am God's as well. God is my Father, and He is your Father as well. Isn't that interesting? That you and your kids share the same spiritual Father. And so at some point when they get older, you kind of can speak. Of course, you'll always be parent-child, but you can also be brother and sister as you get older. And that's a neat relationship for those of you that were able to have Christian parents. And you can have that conversation, talk about being children of God together. And so we as a church are blessed with children. It's not a burden. It's unfortunate when some people see their children as a burden. And that happens from time to time, but they're not. Yes, there's some things that you have to sacrifice for, of course. They are very needy. But they're never as needy as when they're babies. And after that time, every week, month, year, they become less dependent on you. And it's interesting. Sometimes we have difficulty with that when they get to a certain age. It's like, you don't need me as much. Oh, you know. But that's by design. They need you in every aspect as soon as they're born, and then they slowly get more independent. But hopefully, even when they get older, when they get 20 and 30, they still see you as mom and dad, respect you as mom and dad, and love you. And it's interesting in this way that they end up taking care of you later on. Just an interesting cycle that we have of life. So the last aspect I want us to think about as we look at this passage is this aspect of dedication, this baby dedication. What's going on when we talk about this? Yes, we dedicate our children to the Lord. We dedicate to raise them up. But what's really being dedicated here? Psalm 56:13, it said, so that I may walk before God in the light of the living. So this verse is used a lot in baby dedications, that first part, but it says, so that I may walk before God. And the idea is that the baby is thinking this. Well, the baby's not thinking this, right? This is for us adults. When we bring these children up here on the stage and we want to talk about a baby dedication, really what we're saying is we dedicate ourselves. We're dedicating ourselves to follow God and to be good Christians so that our children be raised up knowing God. So if we dedicate our children to the Lord, we're dedicating that we're going to do our part to raise them up in the Lord. And that's no light thing. That is very serious. Because we're dedicating to raise them well in the Christian life. There's going to be conflict in life. Well, they have to choose between the world and God and what's friends and who to listen to, what kind of music to listen to. Are you going to be dedicated to have those difficult conversations to make sure that they're raised up in the Lord? Is it all going to be pleasant? No. You know, at some point in raising your children, you have to make a decision that you're going to be a parent instead of a friend. And that can be a difficult time, all right? That can be difficult because a parent is parenting the children, not just being friends. Now, hopefully when they get older and they mature, you can be good friends. But when they're young, it's more important to be a parent than a friend. And that can be difficult. I remember at my mom's funeral, I did a good bit of the funeral, and the preacher that I always knew there at Smart Church Christ, he did the other part, and he made a good point, and it really stuck with me. He said, Jane didn't raise children, she raised adults. And I thought that was a very good point, because my mom always gave us responsibility and spoke to us as adults. And so she didn't raise children, she raised adults. Because if you raise children, what you have is grown-up children. But we need to be responsible and make sure that we raise adults with the focus that they are going to be independent from us one day. But hopefully they grow up at that point and understand that even though we're independent from our earthly parents, we're never independent from God. Because even as a 45-year-old, I need God. I don't want to think about living this life without God. In a way, I'm still a needy child. I need the affirmation from my Father. I need His help at times. I need His guidance, His sage advice all the time. You never outgrow that. Or if you do, you think you've outgrown that, then you need to go back to the crib. You need to go back to be a toddler spiritually again and learn that you need your Father. So look here at the first two verses here. It says, unless the Lord builds a house, they who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord guards a city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is futile for you to rise up early, to stay up late, to eat the bread of painful labor. This is how He gives to His beloved sleep. All right, this is so interesting, isn't it? If you are raising a family, if you are building a society, and if God is not doing it, if it's not foundation in God's teaching, it's saying that it's in vain. All of your sacrifice, all of your work, all of your sweat is in vain. Because only the blessings from God have the power to give true life, to give the substance that we need. And hopefully our children see that in us. It's like, okay, we may be blessed with some money, but if we don't have God in our lives, who cares? We may have good health, but if we don't have God, who cares? We may have each other, but if we don't have God, then it's all in vain. Don't we believe that? We should. If we don't believe that, then we've missed the mark. then we're raising our children for failure. If they think that they can be fulfilled without God, then we fail as a family to raise our children well. Because it's all vanity. Really, vanity. We do it for ourselves, for our own pleasure, our own praise. It needs to be for the praise of God that we do everything. So only the Lord's house with his watchmen stands. So who are the Lord's watchmen? That's us. We're the Lord's watchmen. We're looking out for those that can attack. We look for those that could cause harm to the ones that we protect. You know the ones that can cause harm. You know better than I, those that could harm your personal children, each other. Are you a good watchman? Or do you let the one that could cause harm to get too close because you're overconfident? How close do you let the enemy get to you? There's a reason why cities, back in the old days, built walls and had people on top of the walls. They wanted to keep the enemy as far away as possible. That's why they had arrows, to keep them as far away as possible. But if you let unsavory people come into your home, into your life, then you bring the temptation in. Then you're not a good watchman. We need to make sure that we're watchmen for the Lord and not just for your own personal interest. So this whole baby dedication is only sentimental unless we dedicate ourselves to Jehovah. All of us adults. This baby dedication is just sentimental for us to feel good unless we decide to live for God first and foremost. Because only if we dedicate ourselves to God are we truly dedicating our children to Him as well. It's not just good wishes, but it's a good lifestyle that we decide to live. So this idea, I love this picture of little feet and hands. You know, you've done that before. Babies are so precious. They're so innocent. We don't believe that babies are born in sin. Notice I didn't baptize them up here. That's a decision that they can make later when they become knowing of everything that's going on, once they understand everything. That's why Jesus says, for you need to believe and be baptized. These little kiddos, I don't know if they believe anything. I like the one picture that Crystal and Jason sent, right? Is it eat, poop, sleep, and then repeat? Yeah, that was a good one. That's the whole life at that time, all right? And when you get older, it goes back to that maybe. I don't know. So we need to understand that our part is to be dedicated to God first and foremost. And so that's a good thing about small groups. That helps us. And think about this in your personal time this week. If you have a devotional time with the Lord, in your prayer time with God, talk about that, how you can be dedicated to God. If you need to work on that, I'll be happy to talk to you. I know Dylan would be too, any elder or someone that you respect here. Talk with them. How can we be dedicated? How can we help you and bless you? If you need the prayers of the church for any reason, please come forward as we sing this song.